But he got off the ice that fateful night and he got right into the liquor. It was a 90-minute drive to the Niagara line, but he figured he'd get there a little quicker. Saw the OPP in the rearview mirror and he knew he was in trouble, cause he was doing twice the limit and seeing double. Let's go!
So both cats are now fucking with you. Alright. Starting as well.
Toshi.
Momo has climbed all over. Well, he was on the mic. Now he's kind of in front of the camera, which Toshi has spun around. I'm gonna take a little video of this because they're having a lick session.
Just like I had with your mother last night?
Sure.
Or
See,
something?
as soon as I start recording them, they stop doing cute shit.
Hey, Momo. So I think Momo means peach. Do you know what Toshi means?
I do not.
I guess it depends what language. Momo in Japanese is peach, but Momo in other languages is like a type of dumpling. Ah!
Yeah.
Hello, and welcome to Canuck is a Slur, the podcast about cool and cursed Canadian content. Today I'm Nicole. Most days I am not.
What are you most days?
That's a secret.
Okay.
That's a secret between me and my husband.
Okay.
And I'm actually a little offended that you asked.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So
Sorry, I'm stepping on your intro.
That's okay. Today I'm Nicole, and with me is Kelly.
Did you forget my name for half a second there?
I did. Oh boy.
It's really impressive. We have two cats that are on the table, and both of them are just out of camera shot on Toshi's left.
I'm a little distracted.
Momo's gonna follow him. Okay, bye. They'll be back. You'll be back.
The thing is, they were just settled. Like, Toshi had just settled in, and so when they come back, that means they're going to be fucking with our shit again.
Yep.
Okay.
100%.
That's cool. This is part 2 of a two-parter.
Of a what?
A two-parter.
Part 2 of a 4-parter.
Is it a 4-parter?
Yeah.
Oh my god. Okay, so this is part 2. The first part was about Tim Horton and how he was a rambunctious hockey player who liked to give bear hugs and died in a horrible car accident. And part 2 is going to be
about a horrible car accident. Yeah.
Oh god.
So let's get going. So you're not late.
Okay.
At the end of part 1, Tim Horton had just died, and we talked about how Ron Joyce's business partner was the last person to see him alive.
Right.
As far back as 1994, over a decade before the full story came out, Ron Joyce had candidly described the scene, again for the biography Open Ice. Quote, Tim was sitting in our office, his coat on, an ice pack wrapped around his jaw, his driver's gloves on. He was sitting in the dark with his feet up on the table with a vodka and soda in his hand, end quote.
Jesus.
In relaying that excerpt for his reporting in the Ottawa Citizen, McGregor adds, Mr. Joyce later claimed that his friend didn't consume enough to get drunk.
Okay.
Compare and contrast that with McGregor's own reporting, which quotes a pharmacology professor from the U of T, who estimated that for someone's Horton size to reach 0.17, he would have had to have been consuming about 8 drinks per hour, if not more.
Oh my god.
Also consider the version told by Lori Horton, who says that in addition to calling her at 3 a.m., Tim also called his brother. As she phrased it in her own book in 1997, Jerry recognized Tim had been drinking and he tried to convince him to stay where he was. McGregor does a small amount of equivocating as to whether Horton's stated plan was to drive all the way to Buffalo or to simply stop off only 20 kilometers or so down the road in Burlington where Joyce lived. However, I would personally like to add both of these plans involve Tim Horton driving wasted down the highway in a De Tomaso Pantera. Neither of these are good options.
We already have established that he loves to speed in.
As if Ron Joyce's own version of events wasn't damning enough, he also mentioned that he believed he saw Horton take a bunch of painkillers before getting in his car, even though they didn't show up in the toxicology. That's still a bad look, Ron. Like, why would she say that?
No shit.
I'm developing a conspiracy theory that Ron Joyce killed Tim Horton.
Oh. Oh God, I'm looking forward to seeing
It's not grounded in a lot
out.
of fact, but I mean, you know, he's got motive and he's the last person to see him alive. And well, we'll get to Ron Joyce into part 3, but
okay.
We're getting ahead of ourselves. So that's it for the life and death of Miles Gilbert Horton, although his legacy still lives on. Like any great athlete, Tim has had a slew of imitators, including many who would end up outdoing him. We don't have time to list all of the NHL players who have merely been suspected of or charged with impaired driving, but we can cover those that went over and above. I'd like to introduce a rubric called the Tim Horton Hat Trick,
Oh no.
which has 3 components:
Okay.
excess speed, significant intoxication, and vehicle-related death.
Mm.
And so all these will be the names of hockey players. Peter Klima and Miroslav Freicher each managed 2 DUI convictions, which raises them above the pack but is nowhere near enough for the trick. In 1993, Dave Hunter racked up 3 DUIs in 6 months, which is not the sort of hat trick we're looking for, but a valiant effort nonetheless. From 1986 to 1994, Bob Probert managed 5 DUIs, which is no small feat.
Mm-hmm.
Dustin Bafuglian, which is the correct pronunciation of his last name, so get out of the comments. So it's like a Norwegian name that's
Okay.
pronounced like he's a Canadian guy, but his like parent or grandparent was Norwegian, and so it's pronounced Bafuglian, and like announcers couldn't be bothered, so they just pronounced it Bufflin.
What the fuck?
It's really close, right?
Did they put an apostrophe in it when they were spelling it?
No,
Fuck's
no, you're
sake.
just supposed to read Byfuglien.
It's like reading a Welsh word.
Yeah. They just completely gave up on that one.
Calling it Worcester sauce.
Yeah. Well, don't get me started on English. That's their own language they're butchering. So he was charged in 2011 for operating a boat while under the influence. And also like I was reading a bunch of people's like forum list of like players who'd been doing this, and one person was like, yeah, he got arrested for operating a boat under the influence, aka normal boating. Yeah. I don't know that you could be charged with excessive speed while driving a boat, so this category of players may be ineligible. But Bafuglian also scores points on a different Tim Horton rubric as he became a professional fisherman after retiring from hockey.
Mm.
Speaking of boats, Ray Emery managed to tick the various boxes in different ways. In May 2007, he was charged with, this is a quote from Globe and Mail, improperly changing lanes on Highway 417 when police said he set off a 3-car collision by bumping another car with his Hummer H2 on his way to the airport for the team's flight. He missed the flight. In February 2008, Emery himself admitted he'd been pulled over 30 times in 2 years. In March 2009, Emery had his Hummer impounded and was charged with stunt driving for going more than 50 kilometers per hour over the posted limit. Finally, in July 2018, after a charity hockey event, Emery capped off a long night of partying at nearly 24 hours without sleep and an undetermined amount of substance use, and wisely avoiding driving anywhere, he simply got into a parked boat and then went for a 6 a.m. swim.
Oh.
He hit the water and never came back up.
Oh.
So he, in fairness, didn't drive drunk, but I think for his entire kind of career there, it's an honorable mention.
Mm.
I will also say that I like read a nice retrospective piece on Ray Emery and what like a troubled figure he was, and it's genuinely sad and made me cry a little bit. So I'm not going to completely dump on him, but man, you can't drive your Hummer like that. Nikolai Khabibulin, the first Russian goaltender to win the Stanley Cup, served half a 30-day sentence after being found guilty of going 110 in a 70, that's kilometers, with a BAC of .164, although no one was injured or killed. As Meatloaf taught us, 2 out of 3 ain't bad.
Jesus.
In 2003, blood tests showed retired player Rob Ramage had an elevated but never publicly specified blood alcohol level when he swerved into the oncoming lane, clipped the rear of one vehicle, and struck another vehicle head-on, injuring its driver and killing his passenger, Keith Magnuson, another former NHLer. Ramage received a 4-year prison sentence despite his attorney's contention that the blood and urine tests were flawed and that the smell of alcohol reported by police and paramedics came from a 6-pack of beer that exploded in the crash.
Uh-huh.
Whatever the truth is, Ramage was emphatically not accused of speeding, so he also does not meet the requirements.
Okay.
We might have to award a conditional Tim Horton hat trick to Danny Heatley, who in 2003 admitted to drinking alcohol, but was still under the legal limit when he lost control of his Ferrari 360 Modena while driving possibly as fast as 82 mph in a 35 mph zone.
Ooh.
This is equivalent to 132 kilometers per hour while going through a curve on a 2-lane residential road. Heatley's car slammed into a brick pillar that was supporting a wrought iron fence, ejecting him as the vehicle split in half.
Split in half?
Split in half.
My God.
So this is his car.
Yikes.
Yeah.
It looks like a jackknifed trailer.
Yeah. Like, I don't know if it was like mostly split in half and then, as like fire guys do, they came in to just cut the rest of it in half. But this is a vehicle sitting in a lot in 2 distinct pieces.
That's like when I fucking gave myself a shitty, like, super lopsided bang cut when I was a kid, and my mom just cut it straight across to make it super short instead. And they're like, well, looks better that way. Ferraris also look better if you just finish the cut, you know?
Yeah.
The comparison might have been a stretch, but...
Yeah. I'm going to play you a clip. So there was this company. So this was a private company that is bragging for, like, they're like advertising their services for like courtroom stuff. So I'll read from their website here. Knott Laboratory was retained by the District Attorney of Fulton County, Georgia, to investigate the highly published car accident involving Danny Heatley and Dan Snyder of the Atlanta Thrashers hockey team. So they say their forensic engineering team calculated the vehicle's speed and path based on the impact damage and physical evidence at the scene. Nighttime animations were produced showing the severity of the accident. So they made a nice little video recreating, essentially, what they think the crash looked like.
Oh, boy. Just the thumbnail looks rough. Jesus. Oh, my God.
Yeah. What a fun thing to put on your website.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Also, his car is clearly black and the one in the video is red.
Yeah, I mean, you know, you're allowed to make artistic choices, I guess.
I guess so. Momo's back. He suffered a concussion, broke his jaw, bruised his lung and kidney, and needed surgery to repair his right ACL, MCL, and meniscus. Amazingly, he made a full recovery, becoming a full-fledged star in the league. The same, sadly, cannot be said for his passenger, teammate Dan Snyder, who was also launched from the wreck and suffered a depressed skull fracture after landing 30 feet away. Snyder underwent emergency surgery but remained comatose until he died of sepsis 6 days later.
Jesus.
Heatley faced up to 20 years in prison, but the advocacy of Snyder's family that nothing would be gained from imprisoning Heatley, and aided by his expressions of remorse, led to a plea deal in which he would receive 3 years probation.
Okay.
Here were the terms of said probation from ESPN. Quote, Heatley must give at least 50 public speeches each year about speeding, nearly a speech a week. The speeches must be given at schools, colleges, and public events attended by young people. He also cannot drive except for work and medical purposes or for going to the grocery store or to his speeches. Judge Roland Barnes also said that the court will have to approve the kind of car Heatley drives. The car cannot have more than 6 cylinders and will have a mechanism to prevent it from exceeding 70 mph. Coincidentally, the number of speeches Heatley was ordered to deliver annually is the same as the amount of goals he would famously score in 2007.
Okay. The conditions of his probation where they're like he was only allowed to drive to the grocery store to work, and what was the other one?
Medical appointments and to his speeches.
Yeah, I was like, does anyone go anywhere other than like those 3 places? Does anyone really drive to anywhere other than like work at the grocery store? And like, I mean, I'm just getting old.
Yeah,
but...
some people rip 80 miles per hour down residential roads for fun to show off their Ferrari. I
guess, yeah, fair. He could have been on his way to work in that one though, right?
Yeah, no, it is funny. It's like that's a very inclusive series of things.
Mm-hmm. Well, mostly what I was saying, like, what else is there to do?
Also, is 70 mph. It's like, well, that still would have killed him in that 35 mph zone. So it's kind of funnily toothless, but he never killed anyone again. So
okay, well, good for him. I mean, yeah, I guess because I always think like, the poor family of the person who died because of this guy's actions, but they seem to be on board. So
yeah. Another contender for this rare award is Craig McTavish, who is best known for being the last player to play in the NHL without a helmet, and less known for a 1984 incident in which he was drinking at a club called the Golden Banana, which I looked it up and it appears to still exist in what looks like the same area, and it's now called, or it's listed on Google Maps as DB's Golden Banana.
DB's, okay.
And according to United Press International, quote, workers there reported him drunk and loud before leaving and had stopped serving him liquor. McTavish got into his car, pulled onto Route 1, and made it about a mile before he rear-ended a Ford Pinto, traveling at what police estimated to be between 60 and 85 mph. And from what I can tell, the speed limit was most likely 50. So for metric heads, that's roughly between 90 and 135 in an 80 zone.
Oh boy.
And he hit I don't think it was a parked car. I think it was a moving car. He was just going that fast.
Mm.
The Pinto was launched about 100 feet into a nearby parking lot, hit 2 vehicles, and flipped, landing on his driver's side. UPI reporting stated that, quote, rescue workers had to use special equipment to free the woman from the twisted wreckage. The woman, 26-year-old Kim Radley, fell into a coma after sustaining head injuries and died 4 days later.
Mm.
One modern article on sportscasting.com declares confidently, quote, coming off a breakout season, Craig McTavish was in a position to become a more prominent player on the Bruins, yet he never played another game for Boston. This is completely false. Here is some accurate contemporary reporting from the New York Times, and for context, the accident occurred on January 25th. After taking time to recover from head and shoulder injuries, Mr. McTavish rejoined the team in practice on February 6th. He returned to the lineup February 15th, scoring 2 goals in the team's 7-4 loss to Buffalo. We maintained right from the start that he is a fully fledged member of this team, said Nate Greenberg, a spokesman for the Bruins. We told him he could play whenever he felt he was ready. That May, McTavish pled guilty to vehicular homicide and was sentenced to a year in prison, which he served in full, causing him to miss the entire 1984-85 season. The victim's parents were surprisingly gracious about the entire incident, visiting McTavish in prison, expressing interest in watching his first game back in Boston, and even sending him cards annually on his birthday. Her father, Ronald Foote, had this to say, quote, "This made us feel better to think he admitted what he did, admitted he was wrong, and was man enough to stand up and take it. What good are we going to do if we crucify Craig? That's why we went. We think the whole problem is he's an excellent young hockey player, he's an excellent young man, but he's like any other man in sports. They come out of school, they don't finish their schooling, they're given big money, they buy big cars. You can't build a skyscraper if it ain't got a foundation underneath it."
Mm-hmm. Whenever anyone asks me about Grand Prairie and the opioid crisis, that is generally my... This is just getting real sad. I mean, we're talking about car crashes, but that's like, I do think that's kind of a fair statement. I think a lot of dudes from my high school got out, got a bunch of oil field money, spent it on booze, then spent it on blow, then we're like, well, this is cheaper and easier to come by.
Yeah, there's aspects of that. I feel like that's its own episode.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Yeah. And I mean, I'm not saying that that's everything. I'm not obviously an expert, and there's layers and layers to the opioid crisis, not limited to overprescription and pushing it by pharmaceutical companies, but we don't need to get into that. But yeah, I do think that's a fair thing to say, is if you take a young kid who's hasn't fully formed or established himself and give him a shit ton of money,
Yep. Or, an old guy in his 40s and give him a shit ton of money. Well, no, I should be careful with saying old guy in their 40s, but a 44-year-old man, 43-year-old man, and you give him a De Tomaso Pantera, he will still find a way to.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of seems like he was a bit deranged before that, but anyways.
Yeah. The strongest European contender for the Tim Horton hat trick is Pelle Lindbergh. Lindbergh, who won a gold medal with Sweden in the 1980 Olympics, brought the Philadelphia Flyers to the 1985 Stanley Cup Finals. They lost to the Edmonton Oilers in 5 games, and I originally wrote "suck it," but I forgot that I'm not gonna talk about playoffs or Stanley Cup Finals or anything like that because it's stupid and I don't care and no one cares.
Nobody.
Yeah, so I mean, honestly, no one even remembers who won the Stanley Cup in 1885 or 2024 for that matter. But Lindbergh personally was named the team's MVP and won the NHL's Vezina Award as the league's most outstanding goaltender. 8 games into the following season, he attended a team party and got into his porch swing. Really fast porch swing. Got into his Porsche 930 Turbo afterward with 2 passengers and a blood alcohol concentration of 0.24. So he's at 3 times the legal limit.
Okay.
What happened next, per the Associated Press, was this. At about 5:40 a.m. on November 11th, Lindbergh's sports car, moving at a high rate of speed, failed to negotiate a sharp curve on Summerdale Road and smashed into a wall in front of an elementary school, police said. The exact speed was never reported, but it was a factor cited by multiple sources. He loved fast cars. He loved his Porsche, said a Flyers spokesman. GM Bobby Clark added, "He liked to drive fast, and we told him repeatedly to slow down. But I suppose when you're young, strong, and full of life, you think you're invulnerable to everything. I guess it's natural to feel like nothing can ever happen to you."
A lot of the people that are talking and advocating for these kids seem to be like, well, they're kids, what's going to happen? But you're right, that Tim Horton was not a kid by any stretch of the imagination.
Yeah, I think that's very true, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody should drive drunk, but it is less shocking when you're 19 years old.
Mm-hmm.
I would hope, at least, your brain doesn't develop till you're 25 kind of thing.
Yeah. But yeah, 42 with a wife and kids who you seem to
44.
44, pardon me. 44 with a wife and kids who you appear to care about, like the fact that he was reticent, is that the right word? Hesitant to take that job because he didn't want to uproot them. It sounds like he at least had some sort of consideration for his family. He wasn't just a guy that's whatever, I had kids.
Yeah,
wife
hesitant,
take care of them. Yeah.
Reticent means you're like unwilling to speak very much, but people use it wrong all the time. And I, as a pedant, have to like push those emotions down all the time.
Oh.
But you never know when those emotions are going to come back up, you know?
Yeah, you never know.
I thought I had my pedantry under control.
But you were crying a little bit as you were
Yeah.
listening to me say that.
Yeah. And then someone came, the cats came over and said it's going to be okay. And I knew it was going to be okay.
Well, I hope that helps you push through the
Yeah.
rest of the podcast.
But yeah, he was not invulnerable to everything. He was not invulnerable to brick walls.
Hmm.
Or it just had a wall. I don't know if it was brick. The Associated Press describes the aftermath as follows. Quote, the 2 passengers in Lindbergh's car, both friends who squeezed into the front seat of his Porsche, were seriously injured and remained in hospital. Kathleen McNeil, 22, was in stable condition at Kennedy Memorial with injuries to the liver and spleen. Edward Parvin, 28, was in critical condition with a fractured skull. In addition to critical brain injuries, Lindbergh suffered fractures of the hip, leg, and jaw. He was, quote, twisted up like a pretzel and pinned in the wreckage, said Somerdale Police Detective Charles Pope. This was Pelle Lindbergh's car.
Oh, okay. Oh, boy.
Yeah, I don't know. Do you want to describe that one for the audio?
The driver's seat is basically entirely compressed. Like, the driver's side is entirely compressed. And I don't understand I don't know how you would survive a crash in that driver's seat. What I'm really distracted by is the 2 dudes on the left, and specifically the one guy wearing the most 80s outfit I've ever seen in my life. Like, it looks like what Dolph Lundgren wore in that Rocky movie, whichever one that was.
4, I think.
He's got it looks like probably it was a sweatshirt, but he's ripped off the sleeves and made a slit down the front to show off his chest. And then he's wearing these like cropped sweatpants and super long white socks. So there's like an inch of skin between the two.
Oh yeah, that's really good. That's a beautiful, this is like 1985. So it's a
hell yeah,
wonderful time for fashion. Yeah, this is the one where he was described as twisted up like a pretzel.
Yep, that's an accurate description.
While it's reported that his passengers survived, Lindbergh was declared brain dead and his parents opted to discontinue life support and donate his organs the next day, on the 12th. On the 14th, the Flyers proceeded with their game against the Oilers, who had offered to postpone, and won 5-3. 14 years later, an unequivocal Tim Horton hat trick was scored by Steve Chason, then of the Carolina Hurricanes. Carolina had just been eliminated from the Stanley Cup playoffs by the Boston Bruins, clearly a minor theme in this episode, and several of the players gathered for a 1 a.m. wrap-up party back on the outskirts of Raleigh. Chason drank enough to register a .27 BAC.
Jesus.
As did a number of others, and so several taxis were called to safely ship the players home. The first taxi took a handful of players away, but Chason was not among them. This article from the Greensboro News and Record very eloquently describes what follows with just about the most concise 1-2 punch I've ever seen in a news article. Quote, but Chason apparently grew impatient and decided he could make the short trip home by himself. Chason is survived by his wife, Susan, and 3 children, Michael, 8, Ryan, 5, and Stephanie, 3.
Oh my God. The way you phrased that, it sounded like they had a breathalyzer, they tested themselves, and then they called the cabs?
No, they do like post-mortem blood tests.
Okay. The way you read it, I was just like, does this just happen so often that they're like, it's like fucking full on Leahy?
Yeah, we're going to need this for our podcast later, so.
Yeah.
Did you know, this came up, I think it was when we were doing our Bone Cop, Bad Cop episode, but the guy who played Leahy was like extremely like sweet guy who was like not a drinker at all. He just drank like apple juice the whole time.
Aww.
And he died of cancer like 2 years ago, but his YouTube channel just has him going around his property, like showing all the landscaping he'd done. He's like, this is where we little brick wall over here. And you know, if we had over, I can't do the voice very well, but it's really wholesome.
Magic door. So all these cobbles are going to be in here. This magic door is going to go through right there. Coming here. It's going to dig right through there.
Oh my God.
It's going to dig right up through there. And it's going to be a set of stairs. And right here in the magic doorway is a man.
Oh my God.
Holding a wire man with a wire man in his head holding a nail. And the wire man was made by a man who killed himself, and a friend of his took it and gave it to someone else, who gave it to my son, who gave it to me.
Right.
I didn't know what to do with it, so I took a nail that my brother Philip had used to hang himself. This doorway has so much magic in it that when we put that man there, My son came down about an hour later,
Right.
because he was glad to be rid of it.
Yeah.
And there was a snake curled around. And all day, things like eagles swooped through here. Martins came along the shore. And Jimmy Cleveland,
Yeah.
if you go to John Dunsworth YouTube,
Yeah.
check out This is Jim Cleveland,
Okay.
and you'll know from whence I speak.
I have a problem where I get attached to things really quickly. So when you were like, he was a really sweet guy, and he just drank apple juice, and he was like, and I was like, aw, and then you're like, he died of cancer, and I immediately just like,
Yeah, that was a very fast roller coaster. Chaison's story stands out in part because it hits just about every note in Tim Horton's swan song. He was very drunk. He was clearly speeding. Police estimated he was traveling 74 in a 55 or 119 in an 88 in normal terms. He wasn't wearing his seatbelt. He had suitable safe transportation home that he was encouraged to use. It was a little after 4 a.m., mere hours after a major loss, and his own death was the only injury as he lost control of his vehicle, left the road, left the vehicle as it rolled multiple times, and managed over 100 feet of separation from where his truck finally stopped.
oh boy, just identical.
Yeah, but he was driving a truck. That was interesting. Oh yeah, and they were both defensemen. And like Tim Horton, Steve Chason is fondly remembered. Each year, per the Hockey News, quote, the Carolina players give the Steve Chason Award to a teammate who shows extraordinary dedication and determination, end quote. Presumably, this refers to the dedication and determination Chason showed toward driving his own vehicle home.
Oh boy.
Yep.
Did we ever talk about Joyce and like his...
Oh, we
Yeah.
will.
Okay, we've got more. I was like, is there another opportunity? Because I have a lot to say about that.
Yeah, no, we will talk about Ron Joyce, don't you worry.
Okay. So wait, there were more cabs coming. Was he the only one there? Were there buddies at the party that were like also waiting for
I think
cabs?
multiple people told him not to drive, we're just waiting for another cab.
Yeah.
But he was like, I can make it home. And he I think the drive home, I think they said somewhere it was a 7-minute drive home, which also, again, no one should be drinking and driving, but you understand why if you're doing a 100-kilometer drive home, what's supposed to be a 90-minute drive home, and you're ripping, you're gonna, there's such a high chance of you crashing, but man, you couldn't make it 7 minutes. It's a bit of a skill issue. You had a short drive and you still wrecked yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Why did you need to speed? You were 10 minutes away, or whatever the number was. I think it was about 7, 8, 9, 10 minutes.
Oh boy.
It was not far.
Mm-hmm.
And lastly, we have Michel Briere. While I've credited Horton as an innovator in the fatal intoxicated speeding space, he wasn't actually quite the first NHL player to die this way. Briere was a very promising young player in the fledgling Pittsburgh Penguins franchise just shortly before Tim Horton would arrive there. In his first season in 1969-70, Briere scored the franchise's first ever overtime goal, which clinched their first ever playoff series win. And then, 15 days after the Penguins were eliminated in the second round, according to La Presse, based on information that came about for a TV documentary 50 years later, Briere was drinking and insisted on driving despite the pleas of his friends. He got into his brand new Mercury Cougar along with 2 of his companions. This is how I've translated the relevant section of the La Presse article. And then Briere, by all accounts an inexperienced driver, missed a curve at high speed, leaving the 3 occupants no chance. The car ended up in pieces, leaving the occupants in a lamentable state, including Briere himself, plunged into a long and painful coma from which he never awoke. Although the Journal de Montréal reports that the car rolled several times, his 2 friends were not fatally injured. Also left behind was his fiancée, Michelle Baudouin, who he was set to marry only 2 weeks later, and their 1-year-old son, Martin. She later described the painful process of losing Briere over the next 11 months. And is it a bit confusing because his name is Michelle spelt the masculine way, and her name is Michelle spelt the feminine way? So without that being written, it's hard to tell, but, quote, toward the end, I was no longer able to see him. It became too difficult for me. He became so small. They sat him on a chair and he was so thin, says Michelle, who visited him every day during the first 3 months of hospitalization.
Oh my God.
I'll tell you frankly, it's been 50 years, and I think it's been less than 10 years since I stopped dreaming about him, that I don't have a nightmare it's not true that he is dead. They hid him somewhere, and all sorts of other reasons. Now that sucks.
That's horrifying.
But here's what sucks even more. While en route to the hospital, the ambulance carrying Briere struck and killed a cyclist, Raymond Perreault. Michel Baudouin also reflected on him. He was a good friend of Michel. It's sad when you think that the newspapers and networks have made so many articles about this Michel Briere accident, but for this poor guy, no one talked about it. Also, Michel Briere, the person who was speeding and killed himself and endangered his friends, got a hockey rink named after him. And Raymond Perreault, the innocent cyclist, as far as I can tell, did not get anything.
Oh, boy.
So, so that was all a bit heavy.
No shit.
So
Oh my
here
God.
are a few low stakes entries as a palate cleanser. Alex Galchenyuk got into a lot of trouble for a relatively minor fender bender while intoxicated. You hate to have to quote from the New York Post, but here we go. A witness told police that a white BMW hit a curb and sign and Galchenyuk got out and laid on the ground. When officers arrived, they watched a man take Galchenyuk off the ground about 20 feet from the car and put him into the passenger seat and drive away. As police pulled the car over, they noticed both men were heavily impaired.
Oh, boy. So someone came to pick him up, or like someone he was...
Yeah, so that someone was his father, who was also named Alexander Galchenyuk.
Okay. That makes the police report a fucking nightmare, I'm sure.
Yeah.
I guess you could write senior and junior.
Galchenyuk ended up reaching under his seat while uttering threats, which experts agree, rookie mistake.
Oh, boy.
He was thrown to the ground, handcuffed, and brought to jail in the back of the police car, where we get even more fun antics.
I was expecting you to say he got shot.
No. No, he's a white guy.
I guess.
Arizona's Family, a local news outlet, has some good excerpts. So Galchenyuk was born in Belarus and like played hockey and stuff for most of his life in North America, but I think mostly lived in Russia until he was like 15 or so. So he speaks like perfect English, but he has the exact right amount of... Also, you can watch this entire arrest video. You can watch all this body cam footage. It's wild.
Oh,
But he has the most perfect, like, menacing accent to be like a Bond movie villain or something.
cool. Love it.
Yeah. So this is quoting from this reporting. Video from inside the police cruiser shows Galchenyuk in handcuffs making disturbing promises. "If you cut me across, they'll chop your liver across," Galchenyuk said. "All your kids and wives and daughters will die. I'll make sure of that."
Oh my God.
The video also shows...
Fucking nut.
The video also shows Galchenyuk threatening to kill officers' families, saying, "One phone call and you're all dead. Your whole family, your bloodline is dead. And your friends are going to get murdered. You'll know that," expletive. And I believe that expletive was a racial slur.
Oh.
Yeah, because one of the officers is black and he drops a lot of N-words.
Oh, boy. That's okay. So do you think that he actually like knew people, or was he just being like, I'm Russian and I can threaten people and it'll be scary?
Great question.
Okay.
So these are Galchenyuk's crazy eyes when he's in his own car.
Oh my God.
Does that not look like the face of a man who will kill you?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
He looks like he was like ready to just like carve a swastika into his forehead.
It really is like a movie villain scene when you watch the footage, because like he's kind of handsome. And so like he looks like a Hollywood actor who's just really has he's got the Tom Cruise nothing going on look.
Yes. Yeah, it's very spooky.
All right, so more from the Post. The 11-year NHL veteran who spent much of his youth in Russia cited connections to Moscow and uttered a racial slur multiple times while referring to an officer in training, per the report. He later said he was joking about the threats.
But not the slur.
Yeah.
Cool. Good. Cool guy.
Our most fun entry comes from Riley Shahan. In 2012, the then 20-year-old from St. Catharines, Ontario, spiritual birthplace of Rush, literal death place of Tim Horton, was playing in the AHL out of Grand Rapids, Michigan. Shahan was using a 23-year-old teammate's ID to get into American bars, which I don't care, because he was 20. That's fine. But when he was pulled over by police for driving the wrong way down a one-way street, this was a lesser concern. Of greater concern was Shahan's blood alcohol concentration. Interestingly, in Michigan, there are actually extra penalties for drivers clocking in with a level of 0.17 or higher, the Tim Horton threshold, if you will. So like the thing being like 0.16 is double the legal limit. So yeah, anything above that. This rule is frequently referred to in reporting as Michigan's super drunk law, although I'm sad to report this phrase does not appear in the text of the law itself. But it would be very funny to be like, yeah, you were legally super drunk. Shahan made the grade easily with a BAC of 0.30. 0.30.
Oh, man.
Which is the highest confirmed number that we've talked about. But almost nothing else about this incident really registers on our rubric. No one was speeding, no one was hurt, and Shahan proceeded to stay out of further legal trouble and go on to have a rather unassuming 14 seasons in the NHL.
So that's almost quadruple the limit? Is that
8, 16, 24, 32, yeah.
Oh, Jesus.
Yeah. What makes this incident noteworthy was that Shahan was arrested on October 30th. Would you like to guess why that makes it noteworthy? He's drinking and driving on October 30th.
Okay. Is it noteworthy because his friends were upset because he was going to be too hungover to come to their Halloween party?
Yeah, kinda. He was, to
caused a
quote
little-
a report from Michigan Live, quote, wearing the costume of a purple Teletubby, also known as Tinky Winky, when he was pulled over.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
That checks out. Okay.
And also I think it was like a Monday.
Okay.
Like it's not like it was the Friday or anything.
Why wouldn't you just have it on the 31st then? Like if you're already doing it in the middle
I
of the
don't
week.
know. Maybe they had a game on the 31st.
I guess. Because I was like, okay, maybe the 31st was a Sunday or a Monday, but fuck's sakes. Okay, cool.
Now, normally my stance is that publicizing videos of people's arrests is rarely in the public interest. Normally, I would also point out that the field sobriety tests are stupid and useless. Normally, I would go on about how combining these things, which is right up the alley of shitty cop shows, serves mostly to exploit society's most vulnerable people. However, since this is A, a years-old incident involving a successful athlete who faced no meaningful consequences, and B, extremely funny, I'm now going to show you the footage of Riley Shahan utterly failing a field sobriety test in a Teletubby costume.
Hell yeah.
Here we go.
Next thing I want you to stay right like that. I want you to lift one foot up off the ground. I don't care what foot you use. Lift one foot up. Hold it there for 30 seconds.
Nope.
I kind of wish he was wearing the helmet or the hat.
Yeah.
You gotta hold out in front of you. Not behind you. There you go.
I like that she said, there you go, like he's doing a good job.
Yeah. Well, again, he's a white guy. They're just
Can you hold it off the ground?
doing this for fun, really.
It's like she's talking to a toddler.
Yeah.
Okay, Brendan. Next thing I want you to do is put your hands behind your back.
Okay, that's enough, buddy.
You're under arrest for OWI, okay?
You're done?
Yeah, it's good. Oh no, I meant like,
Oh.
she's like, oh, okay, that's enough. No, we don't need to do this anymore.
Yeah.
We know what's up.
I mean, that really is the end of the video. Like,
Oh, okay.
yeah. So that's that.
He couldn't even walk. That's like that classic joke of like, oh, how was I supposed to get home? I couldn't walk.
Yeah.
Like he can't even lift up his one foot without falling over. How did he get out of the vehicle?
Yeah. I mean, seeing how he was there with that 0.3, like, you're like, Tim Horton 0.17? Maybe, yeah, that's barely even drunk. That's nothing. That's barely half a Riley Shahan.
Yeah, maybe the Joyce guy, what's his first name?
Ron Joyce.
Maybe Ron Joyce was right the whole time. Tim Horton wasn't even drunk when he got into that car.
Maybe Ron Joyce was just drunker than Tim Horton. It's like, well, I made it home fine.
Ron Joyce would have blown a 0.3.
Yeah. I am absolutely going to slander Ron Joyce here. I'm going to say he was drunk. I have no proof of this. Finally, I want to cover one more player who did not at all score the Tim Horton hat trick, but in my opinion, delivered arguably the most fitting tribute to our hero. In July 2015, less than a month after being acquired by the Buffalo Sabres, the very team Tim was playing for when he crashed, Ryan O'Reilly was arrested by the Ontario Provincial Police. As they put in their press release, quote, a green Chevrolet pickup truck struck a commercial retail building. Sports Illustrated provides more detail. Police said O'Reilly and an unspecified number of passengers left the scene of the crash. The truck was found later, and O'Reilly was found walking on a nearby street. O'Reilly's blood alcohol content was found to be over Ontario's legal limit of 0.08, and he was charged with driving while impaired. The charges were eventually dropped as there was insufficient evidence to prove that O'Reilly had been the one driving the vehicle. There's a lesson there, kids.
Okay.
Just walk away.
I
If
guess.
you crash your car, just walk away. Like, it could have been anyone driving my car that is abandoned.
That's, sound advice.
One fun detail is that the truck, which appears to be a Chevrolet Advanced design from the late 40s to early 50s, so this old truck could feasibly have been driven by Tim Horton if he drove pickup trucks, which he did not appear to. Anyway, the really fun detail is that the commercial retail building that O'Reilly drove into was, in fact, a Tim Hortons. One reporter quoted a courtroom witness as saying, quote, some dumbass tried to drive through the Tim Hortons window and tried to leave.
It's called a drive-through, guys, okay?
That's right. This last footnote doesn't contain any speeding, drunk driving, or death, but I also have to quickly mention Steve Durbano, whose overall exploits earned him a short 5-part podcast from TSN, which I will say is 100% worth a listen.
Mm-hmm.
Durbano played 225 games in the 1970s and was arrested in 1997 for trying to set up a prostitution ring. As the Bleacher Report describes it, quote, Durbano, who was living on welfare and a $300 a month hockey pension at the time, was nabbed in a sting operation after a blonde female police officer answered one of his personal ads for his escort service. She met with Durbano where he went over prices of various acts and gave her a code name. And now where specifically did they meet in person?
At Tim Hortons.
At Tim Hortons.
Hell yeah. Where else would you ever meet to interview prospective employees?
Yeah, 100%. Also, I like they have to mention that the police officer is blonde. Okay.
Yeah, that is, a bit weird.
That was a long diversion, so for those who forgot, Tim Horton, somewhat famously, started a quaint little restaurant chain that would go on to outlive him by quite a bit. To understand how we got here, we have to wind the clock back again to February of 1974 and return to a man named Ron Joyce, Tim Horton's business partner.
This fucking stupid piece of shit.
And that is what part 3 is about.
All right.
How did you enjoy part 2?
It was, it was pretty depressing, to be honest. It's all just listing people who have died horribly due to the actions of some shitheads.
Yeah, arguably worse than the first part.
Yes.
Arguably the third part will be worse.
Oh boy, I can't wait. At least we can fucking make fun of John Joyce and that'll maybe ease a little bit of the pain.
That's it for part 2. Do you have anything to plug? You already plugged your phone in.
That's true. I did already plug in my phone. No, I'm good. What do you got?
Yeah, check out this show. Check out the role-playing episodes. They're good. I stand behind the ones that are up on the feed. You get to hear Nicole nail the pirate voice that she's forgotten how to do. And hop on our Discord, support us on Patreon, and we'll see you in part 3. Je m'en calisse.
Later.
Born Under Punches is a collaborative effort between me, Kelly Gomo, and a variety of contributors to create a variety of shows. If you want to support the project, you can do so by following us and our friends on our various socials. Check out the episode description for all the relevant links, especially this one, patreon.com/bornunderpunches. No E in punches. By supporting us on Patreon, you can enable this show to sustain itself and produce regular episodes. Join at the basic tier for expanded access to our Discord server, donate at an elevated level for monthly bonus content, or even fund us at the highest amount. And once a month I will draw anything you ask me to on an index card. And hey, if money's an object, word of mouth goes a long, long way.
What a pop! Oh, how she loves the Stanley Cup! Hockey man is what I am! Let's go! Listen to what I say! Play that game the Canadian way! Hockey man is what I am! Let's go!
Any sources used in the episode you just heard can also be found in the description. This content was primarily produced in Amiskwaciwâskahikan, in the traditional territory of the Nahiwak, Nakota, Niitsitapi, Nakawe, Métis, and other nations, also known as Edmonton, Alberta, in Western Treaty 6 territory. Thanks for listening, and happy trails to you.